Alright, what's up guys, Marc Augustine here, and in this video, this is part 2 to a video I just did talking about should you as a foreigner do business in Nicaragua. So like the video, subscribe to the channel. The reason for doing a part 1, I'm going to do follow-up videos based on you guys' questions. So if you guys have more and more questions, whether you're Nicaraguan, whether you're a foreigner, whether you challenge what I have to say, leave that in the comment section. Let's have that conversation, because that's the only way anyone can learn, by discourse. So the main reason for this second part to this video is that Jose, who's American Costa Rican, he's a young man who's helping me with the videos that I have now, and he studies psychology, and when I finished the video he said that he doesn't feel like I properly answered the question. So he took a couple minutes, wrote a couple questions he's going to have for me. So this part 2 is a more structured way where Jose is going to ask me, based on part 1, some of the questions that he has, that he thinks that would properly answer this question, should you do business in Nicaragua? So Jose, what's up?
Well, okay. Well, hello everyone. I guess my first question is going to be, how hard is it to get paperwork done in Nicaragua? So if you want to start a business, how hard is it to get that paperwork the right way?
Okay. So when starting a business in Nicaragua, if you want to start what is called a socio-anonimo, or let's say a corporation in the US or business entity, you have one of two options. You pay a lawyer to file certain paperwork with the government and so on. Get a RUC, which is like your tax ID number in the US. The RUC takes about 3 months or so, and it would cost you anywhere from $200 to $3,000, depending on the lawyer you deal with, right? And you ask about how difficult it is. So getting a RUC takes about 3 months. So that's one. So it's not that difficult, but it takes 3 months. When in the US, it takes 1 day. You have a second option where you could purchase a corporate entity, but it's difficult. You have to network with, there's no database where you could just go online and find these corporations you want to buy. You'll have to network with local lawyers in Nicaragua, and they will give you a list and prices of socio-anonimo or corporations in Nicaragua to get done. So if I had to compare it to setting up a corporation in the US as opposed to set up a corporation in Nicaragua, which is my personal experience, it's a lot more complicated, and it takes a lot longer to get things set up in Nicaragua as opposed to get things set up in the US or Canada or other countries. But again, that's just my actual experience.
Okay, and my second question is, since you said that the Nicaraguan bank is not internationally recognized, what would be some recommendations when it comes to paying salaries in Nicaragua, as well as paying the taxes for your business there?
So when paying salaries in Nicaragua, you have to decide if you're paying on a contract, if they're full-time employees where you pay Social Security and all that stuff, or if you're on a professional contract. All my employees were hired on a professional contract where we paid a fixed salary of, let's say, $600 a month, and then it's their responsibility to pay 10% to the local government, and it's coming from a foreign entity to them, right? So we weren't responsible for paying their Social Security at the time for those employees. When it comes to income tax, the tax law in Nicaragua is actually in your favor if you make money outside of Nicaragua and you're based in Nicaragua. So if, let's say, my company profit $50,000, right? And that money was made in the United States. This is what I've been doing. The local government does not tax that money because it was not made in Nicaragua. The taxes that we were responsible for were any taxes that were connected to keeping the corporation open, or certain taxes that you have to pay based on employee. But when it comes to you ask taxes, where there's income tax and corporate tax, and a different type of taxes, that is just a small summary of how we set it up. If you're making money within Nicaragua, I think the tax rate is something like 22 or 25% of income tax. So it's relatively high compared to other countries, but there are ways around that. But the whole tax system in Nicaragua, you're going to be taxed relatively high based on profit if you're making it in Nicaragua and keeping it in Nicaragua banking.
Okay, my third question is more directed towards...
Sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
didn't answer how did we pay salaries. So we used a actual application that is slipping my mind, and so the application, basically this company creates contracts between my US corporation and all the employees, and the money is wired to them, and then they send a wire to each employee separately. It would be challenging to, let's say, go to an ATM and take out enough money to pay salaries. It is relatively expensive to send continuous wires to the employees to pay salaries. You can use an application called, not TransferWise, Remitly, that costs $5.99 per transfer, so that's relatively cheap. But one of the things that I found strange or different is that most Nicaraguans are unbanked. So when we were hiring and interviewing, a lot of the employees had to now go and open their first bank account. And that caused some delay in the whole process. But yeah, sorry.
No problem. So my third question is more in regards to the individual. You said on your previous video that there was a lack of proactivity, right? So what do you think is keeping people unmotivated to grow?
What do I think is keeping the typical Nicaraguan individual unmotivated to grow? There are a number of reasons that I have found in my experience. I think in my personal experience, I motivated myself by meeting other people like me who have done things that I want to do. For example, when I in my first summer in university, I worked for free which at the time was the richest man in Trinidad and Tobago. And when the experience I have been around him, asking questions, seeing his team, his company, I knew I could have done the same. Now, when I remember in the interview process, and when we had the company with all the employees there, I would ask all of them, these are all 20, 25, 30-year-olds, which one of their friends started a company with a very little bit of money and accomplished more. And none of them had friends like that. So I think that one of the challenges with the typical Nicaraguan individual, in my experience, not being motivated has to do with them not having an example or not having a real world experience of someone accomplishing or starting at a certain economic level and getting to another economic level based on their hard work. I think that's not very common in Nicaragua. And there's a lot of, we could go on about education and the level of universities and level of teams and groups there, but I don't think education should be a challenge in 2022 because all the information you need is online. So yeah, I think it's more to do, in my opinion, if I just think about one thing, the lack of motivation, proactivity, is most of the Nicaraguan individuals don't believe in themselves that they could get from this economic level to that economic level. And that's a big deal.
Okay, and my last question is more directed towards you, and that has to do with what made you feel like you weren't fulfilled business-wise in Nicaragua?
Okay. Oh, actually, it's funny because my friend Ty, Asian American, just asked me that about an hour ago. The community of business people in Nicaragua, both expats and local, how could I say this? Why wasn't I fulfilled? I like to have intelligent, challenging conversations, and in my personal experience, that has happened easily in Costa Rica, in Panama, in the United States, in Trinidad and Tobago. That is my personal experience. I do have George, I've had him on the channel, he has a really big business. We have very challenging conversations, but I feel like the community there is not an open community. In the US, when I lived in the US and did business in the US, there was small business groups or small business network events that simply don't exist in Nicaragua. you can reach out to different friends, have decent conversation, but it is not as open and as public as, I'll give you an example. If you guys are watching us do a test, go to where you live, go check Costa Rica, Panama, any country you're thinking about moving to and doing business. Go to meetup.com and see the type of in-person meetups that exist. My experience in Nicaragua is those don't exist in Nicaragua. They just don't. When I moved to Nicaragua 10 years ago, I started the first expats in Nicaragua group on Facebook. It just didn't exist. And I don't see myself as a pioneer, I guess. Or maybe I am, I don't know. But that was challenging. The lack of a big enough community and a big enough open community to talk about business, talk about challenges, challenge each other. It just didn't exist. So that was my own personal challenge with being fulfilled business-wise in Nicaragua. So that's all the questions. So like, subscribe. This is just part 2 to should you do business in Nicaragua as a foreigner. My answer is no. If you disagree with me and you say the answer is yes, I'll welcome you on my channel. I want to shout out Nomad Capitalist, because he did a video, I remember, while I lived in Nicaragua and before I lived in Nicaragua. He first did a video about Nicaragua being a place to get a passport and do business and blah, blah, blah. And then he did a follow-up video saying that he was robbed in Nicaragua and never do business in Nicaragua. Whether I agree with him or not, whether you agree with him or not, I'll put a link to those videos, maybe put some clips in so you can check it out. Have a good one, guys. Check out in the description, we have a Telegram group. We have a couple of Facebook groups. Join the community, ask questions. Have a good one, guys. Peace.